with the next panel, which will be the Agtech Innovation Panel on delivering scalable solutions to ensure food system resilience amidst resource scarcity and climate change impact. Chaired by Derek O'Halloran, as I mentioned before the break, former head of Digital Economy, World Economic Forum, joined by Cathal Fitzgerald, Senior Investment Director, Food, Agriculture and Marine in the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund, and then also joined by Danny O'Brien, who's the Managing Director of EMEA and Global Programs, SVG Ventures and Thrive, Anita Furey, Food Technologist, based in EMEA Innovator Campus, and Desmond Savage, co-founder and COO, Moonsyst Interest. Desmond, I'm beginning to feel I'm your ambassador. I keep going Fitbit for cows, you know. Look, without further ado, could I ask you please to welcome the panel, and then I'll hand you over to Derek. Over to you, Derek.
Great, thank you so much, Martin, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming back promptly at the encouragement of your lecturer there for this next panel. So, look, I'm really excited to have this discussion. I've been chatting with each of you individually over the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, we've only got 45 minutes to cover what I think is a range of really interesting topics. You know, we've heard this morning an awful lot about the opportunities that are out there in terms of food innovation and these massively growing markets in Asia, the growing middle classes over there. We've heard an awful lot as well about the challenges, and I think particularly in the last panel, we heard a number of those challenges, whether it's to do with population pressures and food security, whether it's to do with sustainability and climate, whether it's to do with the sustainability of the livelihoods and transition to new generation of farmers. So a whole bunch of kind of competing pressures, and we've got the production of food, high quality food at the center of that. As a way to navigate all of that, we heard several times during the last discussion references to Agtech and technology. So that's what we're going to focus on for the next 43 and a half minutes, and go a little deep and also give a little bit of a broad overview of where that space is. That's the goal that we'll go through. I'll just sort of maybe preface by saying, you know, technology, a lot of us are kind of used to thinking about technology from the industrial era, which is really about doing more, better, faster, right? Industrialization was all about creating scale. You're doing the same thing, you're just doing more of it. Whereas with the current wave of technologies that we're all living through, actually it's different because it allows us to reimagine what's possible and to do things differently. And so maybe it allows us to create new ways of solving some of these apparent paradoxes between needing to produce more but reduce our footprint on a whole bunch of different ecosystems, and maybe offering innovative pathways for young people to become interested in these different areas. So I just ask you to bear that in mind as we go through the piece here. I'm going to dive right in because Martin introduced everybody. Cathal, maybe I'll start with you. So Agtech sits within a broader, you know, there's med tech and all sorts of finance tech, everything tech these days, but particularly in the food space, you've even got food tech and biotech, but Agtech in particular has got a number of unique characteristics, let's say. And I think you have a very unique view on those in your role at the ISIF. So maybe first of all, you could tell everyone about the ISIF and the work it does in this space, and then share maybe a little bit around what are some of those unique characteristics of Agtech, and how are they evolving at the moment?
So for those of you that are not as familiar with the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund, we're a sovereign development fund. We were formed out of what was previously the National Pension Reserve Fund, and very much a product of the last financial crisis. So we're interventionists by nature, so we invest in the economy where we can have an impact that wouldn't otherwise happen, and around strategic priorities of the government. So food, agriculture and the marine is defined in that strategy currently as one of the strategic priorities within that. So we focus in where can we be additional in the economy right from the start. So we were formed in 2014, and as Derek rightly points, when we scope when we look through agriculture, we realise technology has a key role to play in the food systems transition. Our national food strategy wants Ireland to be a leader in sustainable food systems. So our strategy is to align with that. We're not an instrument of policy, but we align very much with our national food strategy to enable that. So within that context, we make our investments. The fund itself has 4 investment teams, so we have a broad portfolio of investment teams: climate, indigenous businesses, and then infrastructure, real estate, and housing, as for in that. So if we take the startup ecosystem, which Agtech would fit in, and specifically within that, the venture system, because as a sovereign fund, we can't invest in small companies ourselves. We don't have the expertise, and we wouldn't have the bandwidth to do that. So we would do that through venture funds, similar to what Danny will talk about. So within that portfolio, we have about 70 venture funds in total, from life sciences to technologies to clean tech. Climate tech is the more recent ones within that. So the typical features of the venture funds are to be 10-year funds. You invest for a 4-year period, and then you exit for over the following years, maybe 5 to 10, to get your returns. And we've invested in Agtech in 2016, so we're kind of at the very start of the wave of Agtech, catching the first wave of funds coming through. And then more laterally, we went into food tech, which is quite different. But the learnings for, you could say, nearly 10 years in Agtech are quite interesting. Agtech is overall, its percentage of overall, let's say, venture investing, which invests into startup, is about 2%. And in the last couple of years, it's actually declined quite a bit, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Food tech also has declined. Food tech is probably about 5%, was, I think, a high of about 10% of overall venture investment in 2018, 2019. Again, there's reasons within that why it kind of peaked and dropped. But within Agtech, I suppose the learnings over those last 10 years, some of the bigger investments, more capital intensive, you take, it was referenced earlier, indoor farming, highly capital intensive. Cellular agriculture, again, it's more on the food tech side, but again, capital intensive. Even precision fermentation 1.0, high capital intensive. And when you come to exits, you're exiting to a very concentrated market. So the buyers of those technologies have a lot of power. So the experience from investors in that has been quite challenging. If you go to digital ag, it's the same thing. You're trying to get farmers to adopt technologies, and there is a bit of farmer fatigue there, because there have been technologies have been shown to them, but where is the benefit? Who's going to pay for that? It's not always clear. It generally comes to the farmers. So it's been quite a difficult area in terms of getting up to. There's certainly traction, and farmers are very open to adopting technologies. And we talked earlier about generation renewal. That is the challenge the industry will need to overcome in terms of making those technologies in such a way that the newer generation, who are extremely tech savvy, we all know that, because to be a farmer these days, you need to be fairly well educated. But you need tools that are equivalent to other industries, because guys leaving college or girls leaving college have many choices. So that is part of the challenge. And to be fair, within Ireland, if you look at the sustainability schemes, we're the only country in the world to have a national sustainability program, and we have a digital platform that supports that. So we are making those steps in terms of doing that. But to answer your question, in terms of the ag-tech sector, the learnings in the past, those exits are quite challenged, because you're into concentrated markets. You're selling to the majors, the major large multinational corporations who have huge leverage in that. Farmers, there's fatigue, so therefore you need to make sure you get your operating costs right. And some of the areas that are being focused on, highly capital intensive, and probably in hindsight, looking back, if you take indoor agriculture, it's probably not suited to venture. It's probably more suited to project finance, infrastructure finance, but a different model. So going forward, taking those learnings forward, how would you, if you're starting now, and companies are, you need to collaborate more with the end users before you start. You need to make sure maybe even some of your investors in those funds are, and you're seeing that they're strategic investors in those funds, because they can tell you when you're making that investment decision, this will work, or that will work. How is it going to scale? What's the minimum viable product before you make your investment? Whereas in the past, that was probably being done in isolation. There was theorists in a university or not really plugged into the end user who would validate that. So I think, and you're seeing that coming through. And the other thing, and I'll finish on this point, so Agtech 2.0 is taking on those learnings, and you'll see a lot more of strategics involved in that, but also some of the more capital intensive projects, they're being done differently, and you're seeing capex light projects and more clever ways of going about that. And you're seeing climate tech now coming into Agtech because, as we all know, climate is, or the agriculture greenhouse gas emissions about 30%, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, but it's in around that. So it's in scope for a lot of climate tech funds, and I think roughly about 30% of the investment in the last 2 years in kind of in ag tech is coming in out of the climate space. So ag/food tech is coming because waste and so forth is part of that. So you're seeing climate tech playing a more relevant role, and they're going back in the supply chain as well. So that will be a new source of funding for the sector. Hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So we're starting there to, as you say, it's a sovereign fund, and you've got like 70 venture capital funds that you've feed into, and of course below that, then you've got the companies themselves. So Desmond, maybe I'll turn to you. We'll go from there back down to the farm, and you're the founder and COO of an IoT cattle monitoring company that's successfully deployed. So to Carl's point, and we saw earlier the 47-page summary of everything the farmers have to do before they put their wellies on. We have this sort of flood of technologies that we're going to throw at farmers, and maybe tell us what is your company does, but how are we going to make the lives easier for farmers while also tackling some of their issues? What's in it for them?
No pressure. I suppose maybe just to explain a bit about the company first and address the Fitbit for Cows question. That expression, actually, it's interesting, I think, and it shows how Ireland is structured, maybe with technology companies, agriculture and that. I was chatting to my cousin, who happened at the time to be the marketing lead EMEA for Fitbit. And I was describing what we were doing, and then she turns around and goes, "So it's a Fitbit for cows?" I'm like, yeah, good discussion. And then, of course, I asked her, can I use that? Because her being marketing manager, and she said, no problem. But I would argue that, I would think that we're actually doing more than Fitbit, because this is our sensor. Right? So rather Fitbit on your watch, this is a sensor that's orally administered into the animal. So it can go into any ruminant, it can go into cows, calves, sheep, and ruminants. So, and it's measuring temperature and activity primarily from inside the animal. So from being inside the animal, you get a lot more data and more accurate data, more integral data than you will get from anything outside, like a Fitbit watch. So I'll have to put her up on that and say we've moved past Fitbit now. We feel like we're doing more than Fitbit. I suppose that we've been selling products since 2022. We launched at the ploughing, and to your point there about validating the product, I suppose initially we were sales mode, but looking back on it now, we were validating the product because we still had a lot of work to do. I was actually speaking to Alan Coleman here. He was here earlier. I don't think he's here now, but he's a farm here in Cork, and he was actually one of the first farms we deployed our product in. During COVID times, he was down the road in River Styx, so it was handy. I could stay within my 3-mile radius and go down to the farm, you know. So we were doing a lot of that, a lot of validating, and we've continued to do that. And Ireland has acted really much as an incubation site for us to develop our product. And I suppose if you look at our app, like this goes into the cow, hopefully all going well, the farmer never sees it again. But after that, then the farmers get everything on their phone, and the thing like we've been pushing is to make it as simple as possible. Like these guys, we'd love if they're looking at our app 24/7, but the reality is they look at it for a few minutes, get the information they want, they're busy, they move on to the next thing, you know. But it has to be there for them, it has to be easy access. Farmers have all different size smartphones, some of them fat finger syndrome, a lot of them, to be honest with you, some of them glasses, and they can't look at the phone when they're milking because they don't have their glasses on. So these are the type of challenges you're facing. And then I suppose, you know, you're going on to like what Alan produced there. Like I was very, like I totally concur with that. Like the feedback you get from the farmers is not another thing I have to administer, you know, and then they'll simply say, why can't we have it all in one app? And from a technical point of view, from a business point of view, I could go into a big long discussion saying to them why you can't have it in one app, but I can't. They're right. It all needs to be in one app. A farmer is production manager, operations manager, quality manager, HR manager. They're all these things. And, you know, so it's, you know, factories have different departments doing all this. A farmer has to do all this on their own. And, you know, it was mentioned earlier that people are being put off by farming. And the next generation, I can definitely see that. I go into yards and there's no succession plan. So, and you're trying to, the fathers are trying to do their best to encourage their sons. And that gets us some sales, to be honest with you, because the fathers will say, like, I want him to get more interested. He's into his apps. I'm buying your product to get my son to get more into the farm, you know. So, you know, I think there's a big gap there, like, and to be honest with you, this morning I would have heard conflicting things around food security, environment, and then social media, of course, is really tough on farmers as well. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there, and the direction of travel has been going rapidly in the wrong way. So the sooner we start pulling it back, the better.
Very good. Thanks. Just very briefly, just to follow up on one of the points just now, you mentioned around Ireland is almost like an incubation market for you, and maybe just in the context of this Asia environment that we're talking about now, maybe are there plans, or are you already working with countries in Asia? What do you see as being the opportunities to link up with Asia?
We incubated the product in Ireland. I suppose maybe 50-60% of our sales are here in Ireland, but we've managed to sell product to over 40 countries at this stage. And again, listening this morning, I think of those 40 countries, I think only 3 of them are Asian, so we're less than 10%, whereas 60% of the market is there. So to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I'm here today, is to try and explore this and understand more how we can engage that market. Like, we have inquiries from a lot of these Asian countries. I met a group from Japan actually came over, an Enterprise Ireland trade group came over 2 weeks ago. We met them at Coolini Farm. It's a cheese in North Tip, and they're using our product. So, and they're really excited. But I could see this wasn't going to be. This is going to take time. But from what I heard this morning, Martin mentioned, you know, the quality and all that. I used to work in the manufacturing industry myself. I used to work for Bosch & Lomb years ago, and Bosch & Lomb are a huge exporter to Japan for contact lenses. So I understand that side of it from the quality point of view, but you know, it kind of hit me this morning that we need to do the same thing from our technology if you want to sell into those markets, you know. But what I would say is, like, for the Irish, what we've been able to do is working with all these Irish farmers is we're kind of automating the best practices, the generations of best practices in Irish farm. You learn something from every farm, and we're trying to pull that into our app. So I think we've got a really good product, and I think Asian countries could benefit massively from our technology, because it's a boxed up Irish best practice around dairy farming. It's presented on one app they can download in 15 seconds.
Very good. Another marketing strapline for you there. Boxed up Irish best practice dairy farming. Danny, maybe turn to yourself. So you're with Thrive, a really interesting company. You've got a trio of activities between investment funds on the one hand, accelerator programs for startups and growth companies, and then you have enterprise programs. And you're kind of creating and facilitating those ecosystems across different parts of the world. So maybe could you speak a little about how is Thrive enabling some of these sort of connections and facilitating organizations to in this goal for sustainable agri-tech and broaden out like food tech, food innovation, maybe for Ireland and Asian markets?
Yeah, thank you, Derek, and thanks to Martin for having me here today. It's been a great day so far. Maybe to step back, so SVG Ventures Thrive was founded by an Irishman, John Hartnett, in Silicon Valley in 2010. So we're going quite a while, you know, before Agtech really took off, I would say. And Silicon Valley isn't known for its agriculture, but around Silicon Valley, you've got Napa, Sonoma to the north, and to the south, the Central Valley, which is one of the most important food-growing regions of the US, let alone California. So really the vision was to bridge those two communities, to bring more technology to farms and to agriculture, which was one of the least digitized industries at the time and still prevails to this day. I guess since then, we've grown the company. We've about 25 people today. We've offices in the US, in Canada. I joined 2021 to build out Europe. We've expanded to Australia. In the context of Asia, we don't have a physical presence there, but we have a lot of, I guess, momentum with countries like Japan and Singapore, for example. And I was glad to hear Martin say earlier about if you can sell to the Japanese, you can sell to anyone. Well, we've got many good partners in Japan, like Kagome, like Topcon, Yamaha, Kubota, Jetro as well, the government. So that's been a great country for us to engage with there, and also we're seeing a lot of momentum in Singapore. To come to the Thrive Triangle or the platform that we have, so at the pinnacle of that is our investment funds. We've 4 investment funds over the years. We've 2 active right now, and we'll be launching our 5th one next year. We've made 103 investments in 19 countries, so we invest globally. We've invested in Ireland, we've invested in Europe, invested in Asia as well. We'll be doing a Japanese investment, closing that the next couple of weeks. And obviously capital is important, but beyond capital in this sector, we've tried to build an ecosystem around these companies. So not just capital, but also corporate relationships, farmer relationships, university relationships, government relationships, to help these companies grow and accelerate. And we've I guess, packaged that in accelerator programs. We started in the US. We're now running 7 programs worldwide to help companies grow and scale. It's very focused on commercial results and raising further capital. And we see our position as being able to catalyze further capital into this sector. And then the third angle to it is our corporate innovation network. So we work with about 40 or 50 of the largest corporates in the world in agri-food. So Bayer, BASF, Kubota, as I mentioned, Lely was mentioned earlier today, Krono Group in Germany, Ornua in an Irish context we've worked with in the past. And we work with them to help them find innovators that can help them solve unmet needs in their businesses. They're all facing major challenges around whether that's automation, whether it's driving sustainability, whatever it might be, or targeting new growth opportunities in new markets or going after specific segments with technology. So we help them do that. We have a network of about 13,000 startups that we've been tracking over the years. And we're able to find those needles in a haystack. An example would be, I'd never heard of the Kingsley Hotel, where I stayed last night up until a month ago. When I had Krono over, a German company, you'd see their machinery in the fields at the moment, cutting grass and etc. But they've been looking for a solution for 7 years, quite specific, and I won't say what it is. And since we started working with them, we found it in our backyard here in Cork, and hosted a meeting. They brought their leadership team over, and now they're going to fund trials for this company, look at investing in this company. So we're able to facilitate connections like this, and that can lead to co-investment, trials, acquisitions in some cases as well. So that's kind of just a bit about our platform that we've built to help these companies grow and scale. And then, in terms of the investment trends, I think Cathal touched on this, and the sector is not without its challenges, and I fully agree with all the challenges that Cathal has mentioned. We've had a huge run-up in funding in the early 2020s, 21, 22, and it's been quite a drop ever since then. The tourist capital has left the sector, interest rates have gone up, so there's less money going around. But the problems still exist, and some of them have been covered today, but we see that as a huge opportunity for technology. So some of the challenges we're seeing are things like labor, which again has been mentioned with an older farming population. Yes, we want more younger farmers, but fundamentally there's some bad jobs that can be automated, and nobody wants to be doing some of these jobs. So automation is a huge opportunity. Nutrition, we've talked about food security. I think another thing we need is healthy nutrition security as well, if that's, I need coming up with that term on the fly here, but we've got many problems in our food system. It's not just about feeding people, it's about feeding people healthy food as well. So precision nutrition, precision fermentation, alternative proteins, they're still big trends that are powerful. Supply chain challenges, we lose so much food in our supply chain. due to poor management, which creates emissions, etc. So solving that through technology is a huge opportunity. And then things like chemical fertilizers, crop protection, they're losing their efficacy right now. So biological alternatives are a huge investment area right now. And again, although there's all these challenges, the big tailwind for the sector is AI. And it's something, if you take it that in terms of the investment landscape, we're at maybe a low ebb right now. Funding has been falling the last 2 or 3 years. But we're seeing signs of recovery at the early stages in particular. And AI is really the excitement, and it's not just hype. There's real examples here as well. So it's something we're very excited about, and investing in across all those problem sets. It can be applied not to everything, but a huge opportunity. And maybe I'll just finish with kind of one example of bringing this all together. We work with a large Japanese company, Kagome. They've invested 50 million in a side fund that we manage. We brought our investment team together with their leadership team. Their CTO sits on our investment committee for that fund, and we're jointly making investments. We're trialing these technologies in fields across Europe, across Australia, getting that data, does this work, and then doubling down on those investments and making, Kagome can take these companies to the world, quite frankly, through their distribution channels as well, and it's a big validation for them as well. So it's an example of our platform in practice, if you like, and how we can add value to companies that we invest in.
Thank you so much. Maybe again, just switching gears a little bit. Earlier we heard the expression "farm to fork," and if we focus maybe a little bit more on the food side, we heard a lot about the premium that a lot of these export markets are focused on quality and innovation. And so, Anita, you're the BF Food Innovation Campus in Galway, which is a fantastic centre. I'm going to let you describe it now in a second, but I got so excited when Anita was talking about this, about even opportunities, because I lived in Japan for a number of years, and I think I was talking to you on the call about, we should make some Irish-based seaweed out of this place, and I was booking myself. I got so excited, Anita brought me a leaflet so that I'll be able to follow up appropriately. But maybe can you tell everyone about the campus and what's available for Irish entrepreneurs and maybe our international partners as well?
Certainly, yeah, and it's always great to see people's eyes spark when I talk about the campus. So my name is Anita Furey. I'm a food technologist at the BIA Innovator campus, which is in Athenry in County Galway. So BIA is the Irish word for food, so it's a food innovation and incubation centre. It spans about 24,000 square feet over 3 buildings, and it really is an amazing space. It was purpose-built for the food industry, especially focusing on the startups. So it was lovely to hear Kerrygold starting off in a caravan back in the 70s. So, every company has to start somewhere. And as you know, the SMEs amongst us here, starting a food business is a journey. There's a huge learning curve because you're getting into the food safety and food law side of life, as well as the normal business legislation and regulations. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for anyone wishing to start up, or any SMEs that are encountering problems or technical problems, or any sort of gap in their knowledge. So it sort of maps the journey of a food startup. So we have the technical services. So I'm on permanent secondment from Teagasc. So Teagasc really believe, as well as having the wonderful capabilities here in Cork, and Cork is amazing when it comes to food innovation and food incubation, but there, as is Dublin, so the Food Research Centre is located in Dublin, in Ashtown, and between the two centres, Moore Park and Ashtown, that combines the food programme. But there was a dearth of innovation space in the west of Ireland and the northwest. It is, I suppose, a lagging region in terms of the EU context. That's how it's defined. So it was wonderful that Galway County Council and Teagasc came together and saw this problem. And actually, the reason that it came about, the project in the first place, was back in 2016, Galway County Council was going, or back in 2015, Galway County Council was going for the cultural capital, the European cultural capital. And when they had consultants to come in, to look at this, the consultant went, you know what, you've got an amazing food ecosystem happening here in Galway, and I think you should also go for the European region of gastronomy. So I know later on we'll be listening to Barry from Fáilte Ireland speak about the world region of gastronomy, but it was a legacy project really from the European region of gastronomy. And at the time, Galway County Council and Teagasc went and they met stakeholders and people in the food business and said, what are the problems, what are the issues in the food industry? And time again, it was you know, access to money and funding and grants is one thing, but access to knowledge it was missing. And it was that piece, you know, so we could go and ask any question to a food technologist, or similarly to the commercial business managers that we have. And between the commercial side and the food science technical side, we can really cover all aspects of food business. So the project was backed very much by Galway County Council and Enterprise Ireland, huge funding to create the campus. And as I said, Teagasc very much was part of their strategy to help SMEs. So they committed to giving the land essentially for free. So it is built, nestled between Teagasc and Athenry and the Department of Agriculture building. So a wonderful location just off the motorway. That location, you know, it's 2 hours to Ashtown, to Teagasc, but and it's just a great location and easy access for anybody in the country. And we deal with SMEs and startups over the whole country. We're not just a Galway company. I should say that EMEA Innovator Campus is a not-for-profit company, but we have dealt with nearly all the counties in Ireland at this stage in some way or another. So we have, as I said, the food technology side of things. We have 4 commercial kitchens that are fully kitted out. We have 1 for dairy, 1 for meat, and 2 kind of more general multi-purpose, multi-product kitchens. They're about 60 square meters or so, maybe slightly larger, fully kitted out, and that is to de-risk the whole starting up a food business, because the investment you'd need to get a food grade business going is huge, and then it could fail. So we have that scenario where you can come in and rent for a half a day, or a week. We are there to support in any way we can. We help with your food safety management systems. We help with shelf life. There's a lot of terms that food producers are not, when they're starting up, there's just a lot of legislation and compliance in terms of labelling. So we offer all of those services. We've made links with Taste for Success SkillNet and Rural SkillNet, which is wonderful. So we offer a lot of educational programs and training. Again, super focused at what the needs are of an SME. I see some familiar faces from last year's Irish Drinks Forum, and again, we'll be hosting the Drinks Forum for the 3rd time this year, and it's just a great space to get food producers, distilleries, everybody in the one room to talk, because that networking piece sometimes is hard to find. And again, we offer the space because, as well as the commercial kitchens, we have auditoriums and conference space as well that people can use. We've also linked in with the educational side of things, the GRETB, that's the Galway Roscommon Educational Training Board, is our anchor tenant. So we have a commercial culinary training unit upstairs. So if anyone watched Nationwide a few weeks ago, we were featured, and Enda McAvoy, who's a Michelin star chef, or was a Michelin star chef in Galway, he's kind of come away from the restaurant business and is actually lecturing on the campus, which is amazing. So the caliber of people that we have working in the campus is phenomenal, and everybody who works there, we're a small but mighty team, I would always say. We've all kind of come from some angle, either academic or food production, food manufacturing, or in some way come from food business. So it is a fantastic investment, and it's incredible that it's in Galway, and hats off to Galway County Council and Enterprise Ireland for having that vision and that leap of faith to build something. I should say we also have commercial manufacturing space out the back. We have 12 manufacturing units, which are kind of like a blank canvas, which people can rent for 4.5 to a 7-year period, depending on their requirements. And again, food businesses who have occupied there, we're almost full in one of the buildings, even though we've only been opened really for a year and kind of set up for less than that. But it really is a great, I know ecosystem is used a lot, but that kind of peer-to-peer mentoring that will come from having that community is incredible and powerful. And no, it really is. It's an amazing place. I have to say, I love going to work there. It is incredible. And anyone who is ever anywhere near, please pop in. We have an open door policy, and someone will be there to meet and greet and show you around. And we're extremely proud of our campus.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think the phrase one-stop shop is often used, but I mean, it's, I think, a real physical instantiation of that. So yeah, great vision and great execution, and a great resource, I think, for everyone there. Maybe let's turn our attention to some of the maybe the linkages between agriculture, agtech, and some of the adjacent topics like climate and food resilience. And food security. So maybe if we think about from the point of view of each of you, how do you see the opportunities that agtech or food innovation offers to help us tackle those? And maybe we can look at it from two perspectives. So particularly what we heard from a lot of our Asian partners this morning was there's kind of two aspects to that. One is around food resilience, and that includes food security, I would say, and protecting yields and ensuring that we've got the volume, but also just the maybe biodiversity elements. So there's food resilience on the one side that we can help with some of those challenges that they're facing, and then on the other side that we're reducing the impact on climate or other ecosystems as we're producing it, so we're not causing more problems than we're solving. So maybe I'll just open it up for each of you to draw out maybe some of the linkages that you see from your perspectives, from your organizations. Cathal, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, yeah, I think agtech has a huge role to play in all of us. It's a very complex area, but if you distill it down into the kind of segments, if you take sustainability, for instance, you look at some of the technologies like precision fermentation and so forth, and how they can unlock maybe biostimulants, biofertilizers, biopesticides from organic sources, reducing chemical fertilizers. That's one obvious one. If you look at AI in terms of trying to predict gene traits in plants, and through those gene traits, you have more drought resistance. We heard about rice earlier. I know there's a program looking at different gene traits that rice can survive in more more drier climates. We've a technology coming through we have a collaboration with through our Agtech fund in collaboration with New Zealand through an accelerator there, and there's a technology coming through after about 10 years, may I add, but it's a gene trait in ryegrass that increases productivity, again will reduce the carbon footprint of that, and it's something we're hoping to bring here. So that's another one. And there's endless lists in terms of animal genomics, with the whole methane reduction. There's now, the ICBF are now looking for traits where in the genetics of animals that have lower methane markers. Before it was productivity-related gains. Now it's in terms of yield and output and inputs. If you take the digital ag, if you look at the stresses climate will have on farmers, when we've seen it over the last couple of years, droughts, floods, and so forth, to the extent that farmers are saying, well, I won't plant next year. So digital ag has a role to play there in terms of both the kind of satellite imagery and the predictive models that AI can produce to say, well, actually there's a front coming in, or there's going to be potentially more, and this is probably more for row crops, but it still affects the food system. There's probably potentially more pests, so therefore you need to activate maybe your spraying program or whatever, and down to sensors in the soil predicting water. So there's lots of technologies there that can help de-risk with farmers, and then you can overlay fintech solutions, and we see platforms doing that who provide insurance cover. If you sign up to this array of tools, then the insurers will take confidence that well, the farmers adopting practices. I can see the data on that, and the financial industry is all about data. You can show the data points. Then insurers will come into the market. And the insurance industry, I think going forward, is there's figures in the EU, the losses relating to climate in Europe last year were 28 billion. They predict that to go to 40 billion going forward. And it's not conceivable that the insurance industry on its own will fill that gap. And if they don't, then you'll see a reduction in production because the risk for primary producers is too high. So governments will invariably have to supplement through blended finance, but you need technology platforms to basically to give comfort that one, from a state point of view, you're getting the best return from your money, but also then from insurance point of view that this is a viable model. Insurance industry, I've did a lot of work in the financial crisis way back in 2008, 2009. They have a healthy attitude to risk in the sense that they accept a certain amount of losses, but the modelling they do is unbelievable, and it's all predicated on data, and that's where AI can play a huge role, because AI is very good at taking in unstructured data, which there's a lot in Agtech from the various, whether it's satellite imagery, whether it's soil sensors, whether it's production data on farm, going back over years in areas right across the country. There's more and more data being gathered. So I think that those tools are there to be leveraged to support the primary producers. As I said, we've heard it, biggest issue is getting generational renewal, getting farmers in, because the risks. If you're coming out of college and you have multiple options, I go to the pharma sector, you're competing with pharma sector for the high-end jobs in Agtech. You need tools like that. So I think Agtech has a huge role to play going forward. And I think I like Danny's point in terms of capital tourism or investment tourism. There was a lot of capital came in, and you've seen high investment levels, and they've dropped down. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I just think the capital that's left is the capital that understands the market. Because again, I remember in the financial crisis, the banks that stayed through that were actually the guys who actually understood it. And you kind of found it's like all crises. You kind of find out who your true friends are, and I suppose that's probably an unfair word, but who are the true people who understand the sector, and they're the people that, you know, going forward will support the sector. But the issues are there; they're not going to go away, and the need is there. So it has a role to play. I think the challenge is to get the technologies and the investment into those to deliver them.
Very good. Yeah, and we're drawing short on time, so I'll maybe ask for a final thought, very brief from each the other panelists here. But I think, you know, as you say, we're seeing that climate tech is a much bigger investment pool, and if that's now starting to pay attention more towards food and agriculture, then being able to be explicit about these benefits and tap into that, and I think maybe share the experiences that we've all had over the last 10 years in Agtech. Final thought, what's kind of one key message you'd like to leave our audience with here today, and take home with them for the weekend? Maybe I'll start then with you, Danny.
Okay. I mean, just going back to the climate piece first, there's kind of climate mitigation and adaptation. The adaptation side is adapted to the new normal, and you need to have win-win for the farmer if they want to adopt these technologies, because it needs to be sustainable for their bottom line if it's going to be sustainable for the climate. I think there's the mitigation piece is harder because there might be no immediate benefit to the farmer, and you need long-term thinking to invest in that. We talked earlier about regenerative agriculture. Depending on the system, most people lose money in the first 2 or 3 years of implementing that, until then the hockey stick goes up and they produce more. But who's going to underwrite that in the meantime? And I think you need long-term thinking. I think that's towards capital leaving the sector, for example. You need long-term government thinking, long-term capital to kind of fund this transition to a more sustainable future. And one quick example I'd say is our anchor investor, Farm Credit Canada, who announced $2 billion to level up Canadian agriculture and drive sustainability there. So that's an example of long-term thinking that's going to, you know, create financial results, but also sustainable results for them as well. So, thank you.
Very good. Long-term joined-up thinking. Excellent. Desmond?
Yeah. So I suppose our company's mantra with the product is health, reproduction, sustainability. It's very easy to explain the health and the reproduction side of it, and that's where the tangible business case is. to your point, a lot of the sustainability, that there isn't rewards put in place for the farmers to do these sustainability initiatives. So I think that needs to change for it to happen more. And then I suppose from looking at the market point of view, Agtech is probably one of the reasons I was interested in Agtech was it's a laggard when it comes to technology. There's huge opportunities there. So it's easier to to get into a market that's not crowded. So bring the skill sets ahead from manufacturing and bring it across into Agtech sector. So that was one of the reasons I got in there. I suppose I'll just maybe leave one example, like say we have the small bolus that can go into calves, and I think low-hanging fruit, young stock health. We have inquiries now from a big inquiry from South Africa, where they have huge feedlots out there, and what they're telling us is that they're losing 60-70% of their meat yield because the young stock are coming to these feedlots in South Africa stressed. So if those animals weren't stressed, they'd get a higher yield, meat yield. And it's obviously good for the animal as well, not to be arriving stressed their whole life. So like our technology can monitor that. So that's something we can do, but I don't think the penny's dropping. And then, like, if you look at it from a dairy perspective, Ireland's good for a number of lactations. You're probably pushing above 4 average lactations. But in high-producing areas in the world, like in the Middle East especially, average lactations is just above 2. And that's because, again, if you look into it, it's probably poor young stock coming into the herd, the milking herd. So there's huge benefits we got there. Like, I think, which I don't see discussed that much in any forums, like, and that's why we're focusing a lot on this small bolus and looking to encourage healthier young stock, which in turn will have massive sustainability benefits.
Great, yeah.
And one last thing, just your whole alma mater, and again, what I struggle with this is the World Economic Forum, and I checked it before I came up here, have stated that the demand for beef and animal protein is expected to double in the next 20 years.
Very good.
And that's coming from Asia and countries like that. So if the demand for this beef and dairy is doubling, who's going to produce it? A country that can do it sustainably or a country that cannot?
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Demand is doubling. Get in there early. Use the data to create positive feedback loops. Very good.
But it contradicts with the environment. It contradicts with the environment. You can't have food security and the climate discussions going on. Like, they're contradictory at the moment. So, as I say, my final thought, I'd just like to put that out there.
Very good. We are crunched on time now, so I'm going to ask for a tweet-sized thought, Anita, and it might be come to the campus, but I'll leave it to you.
Well, I just think it's forming collaborative agreements with other universities. So we've just liaised with the Atlantic Technological University in Galway, who's a huge champion of what we do. They're enabling us to do innovation, Enterprise Ireland innovation vouchers. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do that because we're not yet recognised as a knowledge provider. But we have a great knowledge bank at the campus. So yes, it's just getting all of those collaborations with other universities. We collaborate a lot with the County Council, with Teagasc and all of that, so come to the campus.
Excellent, very good. Well, listen, thank you so much to all of the panellists. I think we've had a very rich tour of this area where there's huge amount of potential. It has incredible opportunities to positively affect a lot of the different issues that we've been talking about, and there's an incredible amount of support available for anyone interested in any aspect of that space. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives and knowledge.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Could I ask the panel to stay where they are? I'm beginning to feel like I don't know how many people have been to Asia in this room. Put your hand up if you've been to. See, almost everyone's been to Asia. How many people do business with Asia? See the difference? You see, guys, this is the gap that we have to fill. How many people have been to Japan? Oh, impressive. That's pretty good. How many people know what kabuki is? Even more impressive. Well, I'm beginning to feel like, kabuki, they call it kurogo, these people dressed in black who keep appearing from the shadows behind the curtains and move stuff and everything and then go back. And Derek, thank you, and the panel. Derek, like myself, had the had the great good fortune to marry up and marry a Japanese lady, as I did as well. So best way to form partnerships with Asia, marry an Asian. You know? And for those of you who are already happily married, encourage your friends who are not to marry Asians. That's the best way to move forward. I think what's interesting with this is the fact that, as you see with all our panels, there's a lot more work to do. And just to give you a heads up, it's not decided yet, but on 22nd and 23rd of October, we'll be doing a summit, our second Northwest Summit in Letterkenny, and we're also going to sneak across to Derry for a lunchtime session and then come back in the evening to Letterkenny. Last time we did it in Crawley Distillery in the evening, but in Gweedore, nowhere more beautiful. Although Blackrock, Castle and Cork, who knows? But just to give you a heads up time. Okay, so could I ask the panel please to stand up? We're going to take a group photo and then we'll move on to the next panel. So could I ask you just stand for a group photo, please?